Hey there, welcome back once again to Faults Remastered. We're going to continue where we just left off. Some more basic training in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the remastered rules. We're looking at these basic actions you can take on your turn using your 3 action economy. We are on number 12, the probably most popular action you're going to use in the game, the strike action. This is the one that allows you to attack enemies, right? Slay those beasts. So strike. It's a single action. It has the attack tag to it. And so anytime you attack, any action that has that attack tag, that is going to potentially trigger your multiple attack penalty, which we'll talk about in a minute. But just be aware that striking, that assaulting action, that is going to be one of your 3 actions. And if you continue to use more of these attack actions, you get penalized the more you do so. So let's take a look. What is striking? This should be pretty straightforward. You're going to take a weapon that you're wielding, or you have an unarmed attack. You're punching, you're kicking, whatever. You're targeting a creature within your reach, which typically is 5 feet, although some weapons have a 10-foot reach. That'll be in the weapons section. The stats for each weapon, it'll say reach. And then, or else you can attack within range, the range increment for your particular ranged weapon. So if you have a bow and it has a range increment of, let's say, 60 feet, anything in that 0 to 60-foot range is, straight shot, basic attack. If you start attacking more times than that, you're going to get that multiple attack penalty. If you try to attack outside of that initial range, out to, let's say, 120 feet, you get a penalty for, further range as well. That's a whole nother conversation. But one thing I will also mention while we're talking about it is, to my knowledge, in Pathfinder, unlike in D&D, you can use your ranged attacks within point blank range without a penalty. However, I do think that they can trigger attacks or reactive strikes because I think they have the manipulate trait, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Or not manipulate. I think within reactive strike itself, I believe it mentions that they can nail you if you're using ranged attacks. Don't quote me on that one. I have to double check myself. As a matter of fact, I do want to look that up to see if it is in the reactive strike reaction. 1 second. Yes, it's as I was suspecting. So reactive strikes. I was talking about this back with the interact action. So reactive strike reaction. It says a trigger creature within your reach uses the manipulate action. So anything that has a manipulate trait or a move trait. So we've talked about those a couple times already, makes a ranged attack or leaves the square. So if they stride during their move action. So any of these can be used to trigger reactive strikes. So if you are going to shoot your bow point blank range, you don't have to worry about that D&D penalty of whatever it was, -2 or something like that. But you do have to worry about potentially triggering a reactive strike as you're, knocking that arrow in point blank, shooting the person. So they can wail on you. All right, so let's get back to where we were left off. All right, so that's your problem if you try to do the ranged attacks. You're going to roll your attack roll, so D20. You use your modifier for whatever weapon it is you're attacking with, or unarmed strike. You look at the target's AC, typically is what you're swinging at. And then if you hit with a critical success, so 10 above that armor class, you do your damage rolls like normal. So if you got a D6 weapon or a D8 weapon, you roll that, you add your strength, whatever other modifiers you're doing, and then you just double the damage. That's the typical way that Pathfinder handles criticals. You might homebrew this with some other version of the rules, where you might max out the first die and then roll the second die, whatever you're doing, who knows. But the basic rules are saying this: you make your roll, you add your mods, you double the result. End of story. If you just make a successful strike, so not 10 or more, you're going to do that damage. You don't double anything. End of story with that one. Now, anything or the only things you might want to worry about as far as adjudicating things or at least clarifying some stuff is the melee and ranged attack rolls. They are essentially the same way you would, compute them. You've got a melee attack roll results d20 plus your strength mod. The ranged attack roll to d20, but it's your dex mod. So if you're going to be a ranged attacker, you want to have good dexterity. If you're going to be melee attacking, strength. However, it does clarify here that if you're using a weapon with finesse, so, let's say a little rapier or something like that, finesse weapons, you can opt to use your dex mod instead. So you can build a melee attacker around dexterity if you're going with the finesse weapons. Ranged, you've just got dexterity. Then you add your proficiency bonus, so whatever your training level is, you add any other bonuses, you add any penalties, bang, that's your number. Range, same exact idea. Proficiency bonuses, other bonuses, penalties, whatever your die roll is what your die roll is. All right, then the other thing, I mentioned this already, but here is that multiple attack penalty I was talking about. So you can swing up to 3 times, strike 3 times if you want in your turn. The first one, you don't have any multiple attack penalty. You might have some other penalty, but not the multiple attack penalty. You just roll, and if you hit, great, you do damage. If you try to attack again, you do suffer the multiple attack penalty. The second attack, it's a -5. The third attack is a -10, or if you happen to have extra attacks for whatever reason, maybe a flurry of the blows or something like that, or whatever you got going, that'll have another -10 to it. If you're using a weapon with the agile trait, so like you had up here, the finesse trait, many weapons with agile trait, which I think in D&D terms would equate to the light property. So agile weapons, they suffer a lower penalty. So if you are planning on going with a build that's just going to be swinging crazy, attacking as much as possible, you might want to go with these finessey, agile weapons, and you're in there stab, 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 going crazy. Try to get some flanking bonuses in there, some trips to get the enemy flat, or not flat-footed, off guard. If you can get some other bonuses, positioning, or put some debuffs on the enemy, it might make sense to be able to put a multiple attacking build out there. At least the first 2 attacks should be okay, because I think you can mitigate this -4 fairly easily as long as you got, expert proficiency, you've got a good, let's say, dexterity going, you've got the off guard going, that's not so bad. But once you start getting into this -8 stuff, the -10 for sure, that's almost a guaranteed miss. You're going to have to be rolling nat 20s or something like that to get that third one to hit. All right, then the other thing in the player core that is of interest as far as how to adjudicate attacking with the strike action, and that's the damage side of things. So, you're going to roll your attacks, you're going to hit, hopefully, right? If you have melee damage, you roll the damage die of the weapon, the unarmed strike, you add your strength mod, you add your bonuses, you add your penalties. With ranged attacks, it's a little bit different. You're going to roll your damage of the weapon, but in Pathfinder, dexterity modifiers do not affect the damage of the weapon. Only strength can modify a damage's attack. So unlike D&D where you shoot with an arrow and have a +4, dex, and you're doing +4 your damage, that's not the same thing. Not at all. Ranged attacks, you can add strength to them if it's a thrown weapon. Let's say you're throwing a spear or you're throwing a hammer at somebody, then the strength modifier would increase the damage. And then there's also some weapons with propulsive trait, which I've not seen specifically what those might be. But if you have a weapon with a propulsive trait, then you can add half your strength modifier to boost the damage. So, melee attacks, you're going to roll with strength to get both the to hit and the damage. If it's the range attack, you're rolling dexterity to hit. You're going to not get a dexterity bonus to damage, but you might get a strength bonus to damage if it's a thrown weapon. So if you're going to build around like throwing javelins or spears or whatever, you're going to need both high dexterity and high strength if that's your thing that you're planning on going for. I'm not sure that's advisable. Okay, so that's what the other thing you have to worry about for adjudication of striking. Other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. You're making attacks. If you make a whole bunch of attacks, you get penalized. You're going to be making either range attacks or melee attacks. Easy enough. You're going to get a crit. You're going to double your damage. You're going to get a success. You're going to do regular damage. You're going to miss. If you critical fail, then there's no penalty to that. The only other thing I might add in here, and this is again another special topic, is there are some weapons and some, I think it's classes that give you critical success damage stats for your weapons. Like they might have a bleed effect or something like that. That's not part of this just regular old strike action, but do be aware that your weapons in certain cases have properties that can give you even more damage, like bleed effects, that sort of thing. But usually it's tied to the critical striking, and I believe there's either a feat or there's a class that's associated with how that works. That's a whole nother video. And if you'd like to see a video like that, of course you gotta like, you gotta subscribe, you need to make some comments below, you want to add some thoughts to this conversation, feel free. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next video. I have one more in this basic training series to do. Lucky video 13, taking cover. All right, I will see you in the next video.